watching from Parting's point of view. How did you feel about this game?
This one's interesting. They're both kind of starting with they're both trying to get something done pretty early, with not gimmicky, but semi-gimmicky stuff that kind of conflicts in a certain way. So it's largely here how Fantasy absorbs Parting's early stuff, how Parting absorbs Fantasy's early stuff, and doesn't let it disrupt the general theme of what he's doing. So I think this is one of the cases, and we talked about last week when we were looking at a build order in kind of like the build order practicing environments.
Yeah.
That often what really helps you master something is not just learning the mechanics of doing it, but learning how to improvise around the theme.
Yeah.
So if your opponent does something that ends up being disruptive and not the standard opening that you're usually going to play against, how do you adapt to that thing, get around it, and then get back to what you're trying to do?
So to go back to your overall plan.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's even for people who, if you're watching, you're looking at these build orders, don't take it as gospel. Take it as like a guideline and work with it and keep an eye on what's happening around you in the game, right?
Yeah.
So there's, a lot of sometimes in a build order, that's why for these builds that we cover the first 5 minutes in terms of the timings, because after that, things can go completely drastic and go completely different ways. So you have to adapt.
Exactly. It's like, again, we compare it to chess a lot, but it is like that. You can only prepare a certain number of moves in, and then once your opponent does something that is outside that move book, you're stuck doing whatever.
One thing I always do is curious to wonder, because like I studied chess briefly, and one of the things that I saw for some of the bigger chess masters, they would study the end game as opposed to openers. I always wonder if that can ever be applied to StarCraft. I don't know how. I don't know how that metaphor or that like structure can ever apply. But there was this concept of studying the end strategies, like the pieces where it's like maybe a king and 2 pawns left, and
they're a little. I mean, they're a lot different in that in the chess end game, you get a massive simplification of the number of pieces.
StarCraft's the exact opposite.
It's almost the exact opposite. but in another weird way, it actually is kind of like that, where once you get to the end game, you're actually restricting down to a number of units that are meant to finish the game, and it actually is a lower amount, and the interactions between those units is a lot more technical usually. Like once you get down to one of those weird, Viper versus a bunch of Ravens and like those sort of end games, they become a lot more technical, positional, executing abilities than you get in the mid game.
Yeah.
Also, for some reason, in the end game, armies tend to be slower. Like almost everything moves to a state where the bigger, more massive stuff, the whole army movement speed is a lot slower. So it kind of does simplify in a weird way.
In just a completely different way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like chess, but it's kind of there is definitely something to say about the idea of maybe we should study the end game, because ultimately it's how do these infestors interact with a bunch of oracles and carriers and stuff that does actually win or lose you the game.
Yeah, you know what? And that might be something we can explore on this show. I don't know how we'd present that data or how we'd be able to do it, whether we'd start a replay in the middle and try to break down the different versions of the or maybe not the end game, but like the killing blows, or the the mid game and / end game. So I feel like a lot of games end in mid game in StarCraft.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, most still do, and so that's the other thing about it. A lot of chess now at the very, very high level, almost all chess games are going to the end game. It's not until you get an imbalance between player that you even end in the middle.
Right.
They just don't make those mistakes. In StarCraft, that's not true. Like it can end early, mid, or end, whatever.
Something here, and I always wonder if it's maybe pulling the parallels between the two games too far, or if there is these elements that really do intersect. Because StarCraft does have a lot of strategy elements, like chess, like Go. If anyone's ever played Go, there's a lot of like. I am a big fan of Go, and I feel like StarCraft has a lot of aspects of that strategy game.
Yeah, for sure. Now here we get the first main interaction between the two. Two DTs have come into the main base, or into the natural, and a Cloak Banshee is coming into the main base of parting. And so it's how do you adjust to this and still get to where you want to go. So a few stalkers are trying to chase down the Banshee, and the DTs did a lot of damage before being cleaned up. 8 SCVs were killed in the natural, along with a tank and a bunch of Marines and things like that. So both of them have taken some damage, but Parting's build was much more adaptable and willing to absorb, or capable of absorbing, the Banshee that came in.
I think did we just go back?
Yeah. So we're going to go back here, to the Banshee coming in to the natural here. So Parting is a lot better set up to deal with this. So he has to chrono out a observer, but he's got shield batteries in both mineral lines. So he was prepared for either a Banshee or a small drop or whatever it was. And then he still had the robo available, which is part of making a warp prism. So that was able to get an observer out. And his build was ultimately going to include blink stalkers. So he's got stalkers up. So his build is very flexible in the way that he intends to come in with the DTs and get work done that way. But as almost a byproduct of the build, and a couple extra things that he did were going to let him to defend this almost effortlessly, whereas Fantasy took a lot of damage from his side of it.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around how that ended up happening, where it worked less in Fantasies. Because I almost wondered if the diversification so early of Parting's units would have spreaded his resources so thin and made it not as effective. But that turned out to be the opposite of what I was originally thinking in my head.
Yeah, and I think it's having it in such a way that, one, these are the things I want later anyway. So I have a robo anyway. I need these stalkers anyway. The Twilight already came because I was doing the DT thing, so that goes into blink. The only things here that are really extra expenditures are the 2 shield batteries. But given that they save your workers against potentially a lot of things, whether it was a Banshee in this particular case, or even if it was just a small, 4 Marine, 2 Widow Mine, or like a 8 Marine drop or something like that, it can keep a few more of them alive, and so it's reasonably well worth it.
I wonder if the Banshee just didn't do enough work. Like, what ended up happening? I must have missed what happened to that Banshee. Because I feel like
the two is there was only the one, so ultimately it just ended up dying to the stalkers.
I felt like if Fantasy had been more aggressive with either having
2 of them for one,
2 of them, if he had 2 of them,
Raven,
but he made the Raven. So if he had the aggressiveness of the Banshee and he just harassed Parting enough, I wonder if Parting would have had not as many opportunities to push towards this. Pushing to do so much damage into Fantasy's base.
Yeah, and here again DT's even continuing to do damage there, even with the Raven out, have not been able to just completely shut that down, and the stalkers come in to the front again and again get more done.
I feel like, and Parting feels like he was more efficient overall. In his trades in this particular match. Like the DT's getting so much work done, even with the Raven out. Feels like a great return.
Yeah. He's also not, like you can see here, so the Raven comes out to detect. That's lovely, but there's nothing there to kill them at this point, because now everything's just kind of dead. But part of this is to pull apart your Terran opponent so that he has to be in different places. Really here, just Fantasies, the Banshee was way too much of an investment with Cloak and everything, and wasn't worth it.
So I would like to scroll back to when the Banshee was alive, which would be approximately. I feel like that was early, like
4 minutes. I don't know. Yeah, like 5:10 it was, I think.
Okay.
5 minutes, 5:10.
Let's go back to 5:10. I just want to go back to when that Banshee was alive.
Yeah, so it's coming back. Wait for that to occur here.
Yeah, so I'm curious about when the Banshee was alive and the amount of work it got and sort of like the kills. I'm curious to know how many kills it got before it was destroyed. Like, where did we all go so wrong?
Yeah, so it's sneaking back here, back of the base. Does start to get shots off on the probes, but yeah, you can see the work that the shield battery is putting in. So a probe that should have died in 2 shots took like 8, just because of that shield battery.
Now, if there were 2 Banshees, would they have been able to outpace this shield battery?
It still is going to take 2 volleys, so they wouldn't be able to team up to one-shot it unless they were absolutely perfectly timed to each other, I think.
Yeah,
and
so then. So parting basically, I think, had just really a solid defense against fantasies.
Yeah, and he just kind of had it anyway. So
yes,
the shield batteries were the investment, but the stalkers were there anyway. The observer had to come out, but again, that having the 1 shield battery in the natural mineral line basically bought time for that to go. Had the shield battery not been there, then either you're pulling all your probes off and losing mining time, etc., or the Banshee's getting about 5 kills.
So he back over where Fantasy has this Viking, and he chases off this warp prism. I don't remember where this Viking ended up dying, because I feel like he should have been able to keep off the warp prism off further, but somehow these DTs ended up getting in and doing some damage.
Yeah, I think they ended up walking just into the natural. Didn't they?
I think so. Yeah. That's why I was curious. Like, did they just walk in?
They just kind of walked in instead of doing the
warp prism.
Yeah.
Okay. So warp prism's coming back around. Going back around. Oh, the Viking. Rip Viking.
Yeah, I assume the Viking eventually dies to Blink Stalkers, but I didn't really pay attention to it.
Let's see if I'm curious. Yeah. Watching the Viking sort of on patrol. Stalkers, you're right. Here it is. The Blink Stalkers, they got him.
Yeah, they get in there. They go after some really key upgrades. So one trade-off in this game is, of course, we had the tech lab on the starport, which is there for the Cloak Banshee. What if we didn't do the Banshee, we didn't do the Cloak, and instead Stim was done at that time?
I almost wondered, though, if we just done more Banshees, if we'd gone deeper. Like, the Banshees felt like a light investment. Like, it was just obviously the 1 Banshee. And, like, what if he'd gone, 3 Banshees? I feel like, even though that hasn't really been in favor for a bit, but, like, a little bit heavier on the Banshees and, a little bit stronger on their harassing of it, with the ESChamp to kind of hold the defense.
Yeah, it could potentially get more done with it. Ultimately, where when it came in, you were about halfway done on Blink. There was a small window, but it wasn't going to be a devastating window.
Man, these stalkers got so much out, and these DTs getting so much done.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
DT is definitely a good choice overall.
You that was exactly what you said. Like you had the Raven here to detect it, but there's nothing to stop it. Nothing to destroy these DTs, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's it. They're still fighting units, so you have to have enough there to take them out. And they just didn't. And the very first couple DTs got in and did enough damage already, but it was hard to recover from it, basically.
It's quite unfortunate.
Yeah, and then Fanny, of course, Parting's just expanding behind all this. This time, again, knowing that Cloak Banshees are a thing that's in the game. Instead of the shield battery, we got photon cannons coming down at each of the other 2 bases for both detection and defense. And
did he anti-armor missile his own units?
Possibly.
It looked like he anti-armored missile his own units. So overall thoughts. So this actually